this is the trajectory the president is looking to change. According to Gallup, he started the year with a 52% approval rating. By the time he left for Hawaii, he had dropped 11 points. By comparison, both Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton's approval stood at nearly 60% at this point in their presidencies. Can the president make a comeback? This next month is going to be telling. As NBC's First Read put it, quote, January presents him with an opportunity to hit the reset button on his second term. Either January is the start of his political comeback, or it's a missed opportunity, and perhaps one of his last. Howard Fineman is editorial director for the Huffington Post. Eugene Robinson is a columnist for the Washington Post, and both are MSNBC political analysts. Gene, where does the opportunity lie for the president?
Well, I think there's always opportunity for a president. You're president of the United States, right? So aside from some awful national disaster, why would you ever really have a bad day? You know, you're the guy, and presidents can change the subject. Presidents can issue sweeping executive orders. Presidents can invade countries. Not that that's a great thing that I would advise him to do, but it's, you know, I think a president has to approach every new year and every new day with the idea of being the protagonist and of trying to move forward an agenda, and the president has tools to do that.
Howard, he said that he's an introspective individual. Covering him the way that you have, do you think that he looks at this week, the start of 2014, as an opportunity to wipe the slate clean? And if so, how then to move forward?
Well, I think he's been in Washington long enough to know that there are no clean slates anymore. And I don't think he's naive enough to think that he has one coming into a State of the Union address later this month. But I also think that President Obama plays a deep game. He plays a long-range game. He has a gift, as aloof as he can be, he has the gift of perspective. And I think that he wants to use these next couple of years to try to chip away at a big problem of his time and of our time, which is income inequality. It's not going to be easy. There's a cloture vote in the Senate today. The Senate was forced to go to a cloture vote today to even consider the possibility of extending unemployment insurance. That shows you the sour mood that's here. But I think he likes a challenge, and I think he's ready to take it on.
Well, to your point, the president has signaled a major focus in the coming weeks is going to be on that theme. Income inequality. And in his weekly address, he talked about long-term unemployment insurance, which ran out for more than 1 million people just last month.
Denying families that security is just plain cruel. We're a better country than that. We don't abandon our fellow Americans when times get tough. We keep the faith with them until they start that new job. So when Congress comes back to work this week, their first order of business should be making this right.
Eugene, is that the tangible way in which he intends to move the agenda forward, increasing the minimum wage and extending the unemployment benefits?
Well, exactly. I think when you talk about income inequality, that's a broad subject. So you have to chop it up into discrete initiatives. The first thing, obviously, since those extended benefits have run out, is getting those renewed from the president's point of view, and I think he'll push on that. And he's already been talking about the minimum wage, which has lagged behind for years and years now, and I think there's a desperate need to increase that. And so you kind of have to pick these things off virtually one by one. There's not going to be some sort of big omnibus piece of legislation to deal with all the issues of income inequality. You've got to start hammering at this one and then the next one, then the next one.
Howard, allow me to be a bit of a cynic on this. Do those who are employed and those who do not require unemployment benefits are making in excess of the minimum wage? Is this at the top of their priority list as well? How does this play in terms of a turnout measure for 2014, I guess is what I'm asking?
Well, I think you're onto something there. I don't think that those two measures in and of themselves are enough to make an agenda, to make any kind of sweeping conceptual point that the president wants to make and that he's gifted at making. But for the core of the Democratic Party, it's important. Don't forget that some Democrats have walked away from Obamacare. They're wringing their hands. Some are distancing themselves from him on it. Here are two measures: unemployment insurance and the minimum wage, which every Democrat, virtually every Democrat agrees with him on. And it's a way for him to unite the party and take the party into battle heading into 2014 midterm elections, but also to try to get some things done on the Hill. As I say, I'm somewhat skeptical about that, because here on this first day, it's taken they've had to stage a cloture vote in the Senate just to even get to the point of possibly voting on an extension of unemployment benefits. And talking to staffers and members, there's sort of deep, sour cynicism up there that's going to pervade the chamber when he speaks later this month about everybody's motives. So the Republicans I talked to said, oh, the Democrats don't really want to pass this. If they had, that is, unemployment insurance extension, they would have found a pay for it. In other words, a way to cut the budget to pay for it. They don't want to do it. They're just in it for the politics. The Democrats say the Republicans are just in it to make their points with their base. There's no common ground up there at all. That's really the big challenge that the president has.
Michael, I would point out, though, that those are two issues that are initiatives, rather, that are broadly popular, not only among Democrats, but among independents and Republicans as well. People just believe that the minimum wage is too low and that unemployment benefits should be extended.
There's no doubt about that, Gene. I was just thinking of it in the same context as say, legalization of marijuana, where the numbers run in excess of the approval rating for same-sex marriage, and I don't dispute that, 58, 60%. I just wonder how many people are going out to vote on that issue, and I'm wondering the same thing on unemployment. To Howard's point about the internals in the Democratic Party, your colleague, Gene, Chris Mathews, in the Washington Post, made the point that the president has lost the most in this past year among Democrats and independents. Among Republicans, dropped only 4 points because his approval was, frankly, already so low. But among independents and Democrats, he was down double digits. And according to Saliza, quote, add it all up, and you can conclude two things. One, Obama's best, perhaps only strategy to move the needle on his approval numbers is, in the near term, is to rally Democrats. And two, even if that happens, he will still find himself well short of the lofty ratings enjoyed by Reagan and Clinton in their second terms. Eugene Robinson, I guess to make that glass half full, you'd say, well, he can pick up ground with Democrats, surely, perhaps with independents.
Well, I think he probably can. As you noted, he couldn't get much lower with Republicans, so you can kind of toss that aside. But I'm not familiar with the internals on that poll as to exactly why Democrats seem to be disillusioned. My guess would be that it has a good deal to do with the awkward, terrible, horrible rollout of the Affordable Care Act, and that as that improves and things get better or get back to some sort of new normal, those numbers would tend to drift higher by themselves. But you're right, he has some work to do among the faithful. Howard,
in the end, is it all about the Affordable Care Act and how well implementation in 2014 takes place?
Well, it's not all about that, but that's a big part of it. And don't forget, a lot of Democrats, there are still some Democrats, quite a number of them, who think that the law didn't go far enough to begin with. That basically it was climbing in bed with the big insurance companies and the big hospital chains and the big drug companies, and they were skeptical of it. Michael Moore being a classic example on the left, you know, excoriating the thing. And so it has to work to unify the Democrats as well as to try to get those independent voters back. I mean, the other point here I would make, Michael, is that times have changed. Back in the times of Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton, there was a sort of a sense of goodwill in the middle, people wanting to try to do a deal, move the government forward, especially at the beginning or the first year or two of a second term. That whole spirit of politics is completely gone in the United States. There are two warring camps on the Hill. There's virtually no middle ground, and that makes it all the more difficult for the president to operate. He's got no choice but to try to operate in that atmosphere, but it's very difficult. I can tell you that there's the feeling on the Hill when they come back this month is not going to be, let's roll up our hands and let's all get together. That's gone. That's
right.
Totally
Pick
gone
up
in
where
Washington.
we were left off. I get it, sadly. Yeah. Howard Fineman, thank you. Eugene Robinson, good to see you both. Coming
Happy
up,
New Year.
Thank you, you too.